once again made contact with our leader, Frank Levin.
David, you're trying to throw me under the bus, and guess what? I'm not going to be thrown there.
The problem with our country is we don't manufacture anything anymore.
And we welcome you to what we are going to call a PAC Alliance briefing. I'm here with LB Bork. My name's Randy Maugans, and I host several radio shows on the internet, the Threshing Floor, Off Planet Radio, and what we're trying to do is to communicate some of the concepts that are pretty critical for people to understand who want to pull themselves out of this really steadily devolving system in the United States right now. And this is kind of targeted to the United States for reasons that will become obvious as we go through this discussion. The question becomes, are we about to see a suspension of the U.S. Constitution, and what does that mean? And, well, there's no better person to talk about this with than LB Bork. Welcome.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this podcast for PAC.
Well, you raised a lot of interesting issues in the article that you have put onto the internet, and this is an article that, well, our goal is to get this to go viral. People are asleep right now. They have no idea of what's going on in the background because they have no concepts of history anymore. And to remedy that, LB, you have put together People's Awareness Coalition, PAC, and also written the book, The Red Amendment, which is a book that not only breaks down the problem but addresses solutions, something that we rarely see these days. Tell us a little bit about PAC Alliance, about the Red Amendment, where people can find PAC and where they can find the book.
Okay. PAC in law was established around 1998. Its main purpose was constitutional education and political awareness. And most people aren't aware that the Constitution was basically overthrown during the Civil War or thereafter with Reconstruction. And I tell people there's only one word that people should be concerned with is Reconstruction. And everything everyone is worried about holds its foundation in politics or the establishment of government and the law. Recently, I've been using the example of NAFTA and GATT. Corporations weren't able to do what they are doing now without the implementation of those treaties. So it kind of shows you that the law does work and the law is followed. The Constitution, of course, is the foundational law of the United States of America. So it's very important that it is followed. And most people, like I said, don't understand that it was basically overthrown with the 14th Amendment, and they're participating in a tyrannical governmental system. So that is the main purpose of People's Awareness Coalition, which is the acronym PAC. And the PAC Alliance is an offshoot of that. After a few years, I had found that people weren't willing to learn the truth or follow what needed to be done, which is getting their status of that of pre-14th Amendment. And so to get people involved in assisting getting the word out, the PAC Alliance was created. And I don't know. It's been going pretty well, but a lot of people are afraid to jump off the ship and get back into real law. They're so tied into this legal system that they've created under the 14th Amendment that it's very hard. I don't mean to be an alarmist. A lot of people are. This particular podcast is geared, I think, towards where I would like it to be is not an alarmist type action, but more information to get the word out, because I believe that things can be altered or stopped if enough people are aware they can't get away with what they had planned. So I think in this case, I think we can stop it. A lot of people have heard about upcoming constitutional conventions. My opinion is, and I believed they have been planning this for a while, that they are going to put a new constitution in place. But the problem is, the people are ignorant of the law, and they'll get away with something that is worse than the original one was. Not even including the 14th Amendment, which really messed it up. But we have to be aware in mass to stop any thing that's worse than what's going on now, or has been going on the last 150 years, especially. And of course, it's over 200 years. So that's basically the basis for PAC, or the foundation.
And in terms of this specific broadcast that we're doing, I sent you a quote the other day, and I wish I could source this better than I've been able to so far, but as nearly as I can tell, this is a legitimate quote. And it says, this is referring to Patrick Henry. It says, he boycotted the Constitutional Convention of 1787 because, as he so eloquently put it, I smell a rat. And he suspected the worst, that the independent colonies that had thrived for over a century. People don't think about this. Everybody thinks about the country starting 1776, 1787. They don't realize that the earlier history of the colonies goes back nearly a century prior to those events, prior to the so-called Revolutionary War. So he says, worse, that the independent colonies that had thrived for over a century were to be herded under one consolidated government, a vast government apparatus founded not on liberty but on the bureaucratic dreams of monarchists and mercantilists like Alexander Hamilton. And as I pointed out when I sent this quote to you, this underscores the distinction between the original intent, the original common understanding of those original colonies, and what eventually morphed into the constitutional form of government in the United States, which was at least an attempt to secure liberties and to outline proper conduct between the states and the federal government. But then, even people who have studied history, and after I read your book, LB, I realized that even I was remiss in not understanding the depth of deception that went into the 14th Amendment. It basically took all the flaws in the original Constitution and created something that we could just safely say is Frankensteinian.
Right. Like Patrick Henry detected or felt, there were problems, and there were a lot of changes made. My friend Joseph Roy, who this article we're going to talk about today, basically centers on, or had written the article that we're talking about today. He did a lot of research on the Constitutional Convention. I have bits and pieces of it. I have not done deep research on the Constitutional Convention. My interest is more in the law that surrounds the 14th Amendment and that period of time, but even Joseph knows a lot more about the history and details of that. But they changed words, like they were going to use like national government, and they nixed that and wanted to put in the United States in place of it, for one example. That was changed. I think it was deceptive. I've written some papers on the term citizen of the United States, and they use that in deception too, to kind of create this federal citizenship that was really non-existent from day one. That's what they wanted, the Federalist. They wanted this one nation under fraud. It's never been a nation. It's today still not a country. but the political newspeak that they've put out over the past 200 years, people believe it is a nation, and it acts like one internationally, externally, but internally it surely is not. And the 14th Amendment is what changed that basic concept in law. They created this control measure, and it's all based on mercantilism and commerce. That's the bottom line. And as we have seen, they're calling people human resources today, and that's based on the economic structure. I've come to the conclusion that all these economists, if you go back and look at them, most of them are from Germany,
Austria,
Austria, where the Ashkenazi Jews are from.
Yeah,
and most of them are. Even what's his name? Bastiat.
Bastiat.
Yeah, he was even in commerce. His parents were rich, and he wrote the law in about 1850, sometime around where the Communist Manifesto was developed, which is basically the blueprint for fascism, which is corporate takeover of the government by a capitalist. And he was rich. So these people are following these people and honoring them because they complained about the state being an evil thing. And really, the people themselves are the state. We are the government. We are the collective power. And most of these people don't understand that. They think this thing called government dropped out of the sky and just controls everything. Well, they let it, and that's why I feel that this constitutional convention that will surely be coming up soon, which I think they'll definitely want to trip with war. They always do that. And I believe revolution was created to create a distraction so they could put new mechanisms in place to control the people more. We need evolution, not the kind that the evolutionists preach, but evolution meaning advancement of societies, not a revolution of control, which has been going on for thousands of years by the same group of people.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I go back and look through history, and you realize that Franklin specifically, but also Jefferson as well, were traveling back and forth between Britain and France during the same time that they were formulating these founding documents. And out of all the founding fathers, certainly the man we referenced early in this podcast, Patrick Henry, stands out as pretty much singular in terms of his opposition to formulating the type of government they were going to do. Jefferson, at least in the spirit, seemed to maintain the anti-federalist stance to a certain degree. And then from there, it seems to just go all over the map. And what we wound up with, even in the early documents, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, was basically a battle back and forth between ideologies that one tended towards the rights of the individual and the other seemed to tend towards what I would call status quo statism. Not so much state as in having a government, but state in terms of something very monolithic and controlling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that don't understand, Marx's term communism, which I believe was just kind of a tool they used to fight these capitalists, but which in fact the capitalists was the plan. That's what they had planned, and they just created this boogeyman and got useful idiots to work towards the end goal, which
today
very successfully.
Yeah, capitalism is extolled in America as the ultimate value. It has been my entire life. I mean, that was just pounded into everybody's head. We're a free country. We're capitalists. But the ideology behind capitalism itself is just another monolithic control grid as well. I mean, the wealth of nations was simply the antithesis to what was later published by Marx as the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah, there's a balance there. If you talk to any Republican or Democrat, if they're not very, radical types, they generally have a lot of crossover beliefs, and which means they agree. So the Republican and Democrats are just a divide and conquer mechanism they've used to control everyone. So basically, when someone's elected, it should be the best man for the job. There should be no party, because like I tell people, there would not be a generation gap if things stayed the same. And as we know, the progressives are running us into this new age, which I can't see where anything's improved in the last 20, 40 years. It's gotten worse. So this transition, I have no idea what they have planned for this new age. It doesn't look good to me. And if it was good, wouldn't they tell us it was good? Or tell us and not hide everything and be secretive about it? That's the way I look at it.
Well, yeah, and what we have right now is just the creep towards, we've been in the socialist mode since the 14th Amendment, frankly. But you look at the activism that occurred after the 14th Amendment, under the color of capitalism. Go look at the history of Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest, most successful industrialists of the late 1800s. And yet Carnegie himself was actively working and funded his own Carnegie Foundation to do nothing more than to promote socialism that would ultimately culminate in communism. And I'm not making any of this up. That's on the record of the history of Andrew Carnegie and his foundations. So you have these capitalists who inside are basically communists, socialists, and all of a sudden you realize that things that we thought we understood about the way our country worked aren't real, that what we've done is we found a mechanism using industrialism, capitalism, and now I guess the new culture of technology to basically continue funding socialism into communism and communism trending towards fascism. So to predict the future, I would say follow the trends and you're going to see that we are headed towards hardcore fascism in the next 15 to 20 years if things are not. If things are left unchecked, that's the direction we're going to take.
Right. We know Agenda 21 wants to get people into the cities. Jefferson, for example, he believed in an agrarian culture, and anything that's above, I believe anything that's above the land providing for a people is materialistic. And it takes a lot of money for capitalism, or not capitalism, but industry, and I use that term broadly, or more specifically towards mechanical means and things of that nature than agricultural exchange between nations, or something that could be put into that category. But when you start producing machines and that, it takes a lot of money and labor to do that. So when you get further away from the agricultural life, or the agrarian culture, you're going to be spending a lot of money, and that's what they did with this industrial revolution, which was basically, I believe it was planned.
I believe it was a new form of slavery. It was simply another means to harness the energy of human beings and put them into a collective where goods could be produced and a financial system could be set up. If you go back and you look at the Industrial Revolution, it was basically fomented out of a couple of key issues. One was the beginning of the steam age and the ability to have machines that could do certain levels of work, and the fact that you had the crumbling feudal system and basically an agrarian culture that was induced to stream into the industrialized cities to be the engines of production for what eventually became the industrial age itself.
Right, and I'm not against machineries and things like that, but as you and I have talked about, I see technology just destroying us right now. I said to my dad one day, I go, if the electricity ever went off, everyone would be a retard. They wouldn't know anything. They couldn't do anything. You know, I just think there's a balance there, and I think, you know, the Amish kind of have a handle on that, but of course they're a little too religious for me.
Yeah.
It gets, you know, that's, I don't want to get into the religion issue tonight, but anyway.
I don't think
there's a balance, and
there is a balance, yes. And I don't think we have to make the horrible choice of choosing. But before we even get to make a choice, we have to make some choices about how we want to conduct our politics and our law. Because right now, the key issues, as you see it and I see it, we agree on this, lie in the misapplication of law and the bastardization of law. We're now in an era where most people couldn't give a flip about the law unless, you know, they get their head busted in a riot or they get a speeding ticket.
Right.
People do not understand that law is the foundation upon which the society is formed, and you cannot ignore the fundamentals.
I think, you know, people can work on handshakes quite often, but the maxim that I think is paramount, and a maxim of law, is something that's gone through history, and people have pretty much agreed on it, you know, in mass, the collective, if you will. It's called a common law maxim, so it's common to the people, is the contract makes the law. That's the most important, I think, maxim of law that exists today. So the Constitution is basically a contract between the people. You know, there's people like Rousseau and others that talked about the social contract.
Yeah.
And I think they established that philosophy or theory or principle. I think it's more a principle because people generally don't want to know the law. So they have to create a system of where they can be not manipulated so much, but civilly dealt with when the time comes. And of course, America, a lot of the states anyway, was founded on the common law principles of England. A lot of the states adopted the common law system for their general basic law system. And of course, it's like I've told people that it was never pure common law. They always had some civil law, you know, mixed in with it. You know, everyone's in the movement's talking about, well, the United States is a corporation. Yeah, so what? All the states are too. I mean, the evidence is having the term citizen. Citizen is a member of a municipal corporation. So all these people are preaching things that they don't even have the full story on. They don't understand. So, you know, I keep asking people, well, if you don't like the system we have, what are we going to do? Everyone's going to just walk the earth and be happy? Is that what you think really is going to happen? If you put 100 people on an island, you know, a deserted island, I guarantee within a month they'd have a system of religion and a government established, because they couldn't get along with each other. You know, they'd have to put things in writing or establish some belief systems. You know, that's my thought on that. I have a philosopher friend that agrees with that.
Well, it seems obvious to me that the creators seem to think we needed laws. He gave us 10 of them, and then Christ came along, and he sort of boiled that down into a triad that you could call law. that would be the higher law that people would live by. But the fact of the matter is, civilizations are based on a commonality of conduct, and you have a term for that. It's usage and
it's custom and usage.
Yeah.
That's not my term. That's their term, or the term that's been developed by the law industry, if you will.
In other words, laws that basically are incubated within the society itself.
Right, and we have not seen custom and usage law for 150 years. They've destroyed it by force. And basically, they're using it against us. I noticed I wrote a paper called The United States and Its Common Law. And the Department of Justice had on their header, in just a minute, I'll pull up the paper, had a quote, and it basically said that this is how they're controlling people with the federal system. And I noticed they took it down. I went there the other day and looked at the quote, and it's not there any longer. But the quote was, and it was, it can be found on a plaque that's in Washington, D.C. I forget where it was. It was on some street they pulled it off of. And I don't even know where the quote came from. Someone said it at one time. I just found it interesting from what it said and what I know the people means and the duality of the language. And it goes, the common law is the will of mankind issuing from the life of the people. And, they're talking about mankind there, the will of mankind, then the life of the people. And I believe the people, like Blackstone said, the leaders or the rulers have always referred to themselves as the people. And in American law or politics or patriot rhetoric, if you want to call it that, most Americans think they are the people, but I think they're the rulers.
It does appear that way.
Yeah, it does appear that way.
Mainly from even the formulation of the original Declaration of Independence,
right.
the preamble. So, they do refer to themselves as the people. And I've often wondered about this famous speech by George H.W. Bush on September 11th, 1993, where he talks about the New World Order, and he basically says, for us and our, now I can't remember the exact verbiage, but he was basically framing that speech that he made for us and our posterity, meaning us, the elites, because these people view themselves as elites. So it kind of goes into that whole idea that there's a distinction being made even in the formation of the United States of a ruling class and an underclass. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, it gets back to what I said about people, them having to have a control system, because people aren't interested in following the laws per se. They do what they want, which is good to a point, but in relation to what we're trying to get across, what needs to be done with the balance here, as I mentioned with the NAFTA and GATT treaties, you have to have some kind of law controlling the state, and the only way to suppress or put a cap on capitalism, control it is have laws, because a greedy person is not going to stop, and that's what capitalism does. It allows for things to keep going, and once you start forming corporations, which is basically just men creating a dead thing to take over, and have benefits, or it can either have benefits or restrictions, and that's what's happened. Congress has given corporations benefits, and all this was done with the 14th Amendment. That was the main purpose for the 14th Amendment, to create this private law system where people are controlled and corporations also have the benefits of people. So, it's become a monster, and it's got no control factors based on people basically being ignorant of the law and electing these, politicians to go, do their dirty work. And, all these people I keep asking are wondering, well, you guys want revolution and change, but you don't know what happened. What's going to happen when all this revolution happens? And all I see people doing right now is doing basically nothing. They're not trying to learn what's happened to them. They're waiting for this planned crash in the economy. They're not preparing for, they're not trying to change anything in their lives or whatever. So what's going to happen is they're going to become victims, and they're going to become, they're going to be at the mercy of these capitalists and the people that control the world. And they're going to be ignorant, and they're going to be jerked around just as they were during the implementation of the Constitution. It's just the next step towards tyranny, and like you said, fascism. It's just going to be an increase of fascism. And I don't know. That's the nature of what this paper is about. It's to warn people of what's to come if they don't put a stop to it.
Okay, so in the article that you include with the paper that was written by Joseph Rory, we go into a little bit of a discussion here about Jefferson Davis, who was the president and leader of the Confederate States during the war between the states. Let's use that. I don't like the term Civil War.
Right. It wasn't a Civil War.
Which the Supreme Court itself also stated.
Yeah, they did. It in so many words.
Yeah.
They have. The Civil War is political newspeak. Again, it's language that basically is made up to get people to think a certain way. Each state's a nation, and they have their own civil systems. For example, there was no citizen of the United States. So each state had its own citizen. So that's why it wasn't a civil war. It was an international war based on international rules. The Constitution being an international document. It's nothing more than a treaty between the states, or that the states have created a contract. So anyway.
Yeah. So what I want you to do here is kind of tour us through Joseph Rory's paper and tell us a little bit about Jefferson Davis and what happened as a result of a 1978 proclamation by Jimmy Carter to give...
Yeah,
to give...
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I'm sorry. to give Jefferson Davis's citizenship back.
Yeah, this is it is funny. It's ridiculous. But yeah, anyway, this whole thing is based on Joseph Rory's research. He made me aware of the Carter, deal giving citizenship back to Jefferson Davis in 1978, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was 78.
Yeah, which is 100 years after the guy passed on. And, they say it's an honorary thing. Well, according to Joseph, the research he had done, he said that Jefferson Davis spent his whole life saying the rest of his life, rather, saying he was a man without a country. Because these guys stole it with the 14th Amendment.
But he was just saying, he was the only one that was honest enough to say that. And nobody else seemed to realize that was true for just about everyone at that point.
No, it was everyone. I mean, it was a fact. I mean, there was even a statement made, I forget who said it, but it was record. I couldn't find the word I wanted to use. It's historical record that it's a fact. But no one, I've been telling people, well, where was state national society back then? Why didn't people form, a society of people that I've been trying to do for 15 years now, and no one's really interested, it seems. of people that have de jure standing and aren't participating in this fraud or this forced effort that they've done to take everyone's custom and usage laws away and their sovereignty. I mean, if you don't have control of your political system of your state, you're not sovereign. So the United States did a whole takeover, but this Jefferson Davis case shows that the Constitution had no authority to do that. So that's the crux of why this paper is important, and it also shows that the law does work. Without going through the whole article, which is just a page and a half or so that Joseph wrote, I asked him to write it. He has done a lot of research, but he's never really written a book on any of this. He has all the knowledge in his head. But I think the most important statement or whatever is what he used for a footnote that Salmon P. Chase stated. And he said in a book, or it's out of a book.
It's out of a book that was a history of the Civil War, I believe.
Right. And anyway, he said, if you bring these Confederate leaders to trial, it will condemn the North, which wasn't really the North. Again, it was the United States. They just used the northern states as tools to get the job done. Anyway, condemn the North for by the Constitution, secession is not rebellion. Lincoln wanted Davis to escape. And he was right. His capture was a mistake. His trial would be a greater one. So Chase was just saying, Justice Chase was just saying that they would have to rule that you guys had no authority to create this war constitutionally. And they did have the right to secede. So there was no treason by Davis. So, like we know, they stolen the states from the South. And I keep asking, there's several people that say that there was, it was, what's the word I want to use? A conquering of the states in the South. Well, technically there was, because they put their puppet governments in to get the 14th Amendment put in place, but that was after this statement was made by Chase.
It was almost one full year before the passage of the 14th Amendment. I suspect that the 14th Amendment passage had a lot to do with basically what I would call cover your ass tactic, realizing, oops, we didn't really have the power to do that, but let's go back and correct it now, which is, kind of the brunt of the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the way the 14th Amendment was drafted, there's a lot of language from the Reconstruction Acts, which were passed to give the states some rights or limit what they could do, rather. And if you look at the language, I'm going to use one thing that's pretty glaring for an example, how they crafted the 14th Amendment to appear like it was the Reconstruction Acts, just, copied over to the 14th Amendment. And it wasn't. And again, it's political newspeak. There was, the language they used was false or, wrong as a matter of law. They in the Reconstruction Acts, they said the rebellion. You can't participate in government of the South if you participated in the rebellion. And that's the one that Chase said wasn't really a rebellion. But when you go into the 14th Amendment, Section 2, they said you can't vote unless you participate in rebellion. So there's no specific rebellion they're referring to.
Go back and say that again one more time, please.
Well, you have to read the papers I've written on it.
Yeah.
They the rebellion's a title. It's a specific action, and the refers to that rebellion. But if you go back to if you look at Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, it says you can't participate in government unless you participate in rebellion. It doesn't
or
say
other
the rebellion
crime,
any longer.
or other
So they
crimes.
use or other crimes. Yeah, that's a duality thing. They whoever wrote this was a genius. Section 2, 3, and 4. It's really convoluted, but if you know what's transpiring, it makes sense. And I covered that in my book, of course. But just a lot of deception was used to get this done. And like you said, they did it in a way that to implement the people of the states of not only the South, but the North, to rebel against the Constitution. So now they repaired their problem.
Sort of.
Sort of. It's a fraud that people are participating in it, and they're not doing anything about it. I mean, the Judge Bork hearing that I recently listened to a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't listened to it until recently, and then that happened back in the 80s. He basically said everything's off custom and usage now. The Constitution's basically non-existent in ways of its contractual nature. But there still is an operational law, like Section 2 I just noted. You don't have to be associated with these criminals, and they put the Expatriation Act in place.
That's the brilliance of this, LB. They literally label themselves here as criminals and tell you that this is a criminal regime. But it's done. I mean, you're right. The crafting of this language, and listeners, we're going to put this stuff out, and there's going to be links with this. But you have to sit down and read the language. And if you sit there and scratch your head and go, WTF, it's because it's intended to do that, because it is newspeak. It is double talk. It is it's construction of language that I would say is diabolical, bordering on demonic.
Yes, well, it is demonic. They say that Satan loves the gray area. And that's all this did, is create a gray area. They did not totally obliterate and get rid of the Constitution. They overwrote it in a way where people really don't know what's going on. And that's the problem we face with most patriots. They have no idea what's going on. You have the 10th Amendment Center, which I think is planned opposition. They say there's what do they call it? Nullification.
Nullification, yeah.
Yeah, nullification still. And it's non-existent now for political means and legal means mostly. I mean, for example, if a county decides to not pay or follow a certain law that the United States lays down, all they have to do is say, okay, we're cutting off federal funding. And they don't get the money back, but still the U.S. citizens have to pay the income tax back where this funding's coming from. So they're getting screwed. And I talked to someone in Oregon had seen this happen. They weren't following a federal law, and they cut off the funding. The county had to raise the property taxes to make up the difference, or the deficit for the revenue that they lost. So they're getting double taxed. So there is no nullification.
Yeah, Congress is famous for doing this under the broadest umbrella of its unfunded mandates, basically, because long after the funding runs out on the federal level, the states and local governments are still straddled with the obligations, which incurs additional revenue raising on their part. And this is something, this is a healthcare system in a nutshell. This is exactly 10 years down the road where we will be with healthcare, because there will be no federal funding. They will not be able to sustain this healthcare system with the modest little taxes they want to lay on people right now. But it will destroy that system, and it will also destroy the economic system with it. So, here again, masterful job, guys. Nice work.
Yeah, the whole thing's a farce at this time. I mean, They've got everyone voting. They bring in aliens or foreigners to make up the body politics, loss of votes that they have. People are starting to wake up to this. And unfortunately, I put out this information, 15 years ago, and half of it's getting diluted because people aren't tying it back to PAC. So they're not getting the full story of why you shouldn't vote. So it's really not having any impact. It's detrimental in a fact, because they are bringing in these false voters just to make up the difference, because no one really knows the law and really what's transpired. Oh, by the way, the anchor baby thing is a farce too. There are no anchor babies, and I've written a paper on that too. I don't understand. These concepts are simple, and I just can't believe the law industry is that incompetent. Well, I guess I can.
Yeah,
I can. They don't bring out the proper positions to get this thing nipped in the bud. But even like I said, Judge Bork back in the 80s, during his nomination hearings, you could tell he was hedging. He wasn't telling the truth. He wasn't. They dance around it, and that's what you have to do when you're.
Well, it's funny because now that you mention it, I remember watching those hearings. I was at a point in time where I had my own business and I had a TV on and watched some of those hearings, and I remember those statements. And what Bork was telling them was absolute truth. This may have, by the way, Judge Bork may have been the most brilliant nominee to the Supreme Court in over a century, and that was why he was never going to be put it onto the Supreme Court, because he was dangerously knowledgeable about the original formulation of law.
Right. He noted two things that really stuck out, and Biden, who was on the board there, the committee, who's a piece of crap. He's a piece of crap, and sorry, President or Vice President Biden, but you are. Kennedy too, Ted Kennedy, two peas in a pod right there. There's bad people, and they brought up two things that Bork had advised Congress or someone about that were a problem, and one of them were the legal tender cases, and I'll briefly tell you about that. But he said that the Commerce Clause also was a problem, and if you go back and look, the Commerce Clause has been perverted since day one. It's like a snowball downhill, is what Bork was saying, and basically he says it's too far gone to even fix it. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's basically what he said. And as far as the legal tender cases, they said paper money isn't lawful money, but then the Civil War happened. They put Grant in there, who was a drunk and a just evil man. He stacked the Supreme Court, got rid of the good Supreme Court justices, and then overturned those legal tender cases. So Bork had issue with that. So that's probably one of the reasons, like you said, he didn't get in.
Yeah, those are dangerous positions to stake out, especially if you look now at what we're going through,
right,
in terms of the present currency wars that are occurring, the hyperinflation, and the increasing public awareness about the just outright criminality and illegality of the Federal Reserve System.
Well, this is all done progressively, and anytime you hear the word progressive, there are these people that are, just slowly deteriorating the law that is held under the original system, which is, somewhat questionable to begin with. Like you mentioned at the top of the broadcast here, or podcast, about, Patrick Henry walking out. So I don't know. People, the only way this is going to get fixed is if people understand the law. I don't see the law going away like these anarchists think it's going to. I mean, even the libertarians, I recently wrote a paper condemning them also because they basically participate in the system. They want liberty for themselves, but it doesn't seem like they're really interested in liberty for the whole, which I am. I mean, we're affected by everyone. Majority rules, and that gets back to that quote that I said they took off the Department of Justice website about, the majority controlling everything. They don't have to be voting; their actions control it. And I don't see how they can. Bork brought this up too during the hearing about custom and usage over the past 150 years. It's been forced or diabolically implemented through control. For example, and then we're trying to keep this to an hour, or try to, this broadcast. But
no, that's fine. Go ahead.
One word they put in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment was the word male. Mm-hmm. You had to be a male to vote. Well, male wasn't used anywhere in the Constitution before. Custom and usage said men handle politics. But they stuck that word in there just so they could later put this women's right amendment in, which is hogwash also, because it didn't give the women
the
right.
early suffrage movements.
Yeah. And what's her name? Susan B. Anthony.
Yeah.
She was just a plant that was put out there to instigate, start the ball rolling on this whole thing, so they could get women in politics. And I know women are going to be upset to hear this, but they had to get them. It's part of the Marxist plot to get them out there working, so they could be taxed under the income tax. So they could break up that was part of breaking up the families also. That's the reason they had to break up the families.
A masterful job. What a job they've done in our lifetime, eh?
My point is, they did it intentionally. And Section 2, like I said, they put male in there just as a trip word so they could bring this about. So the reason I did bring it up is because of the devious tricks they've installed into the amendment.
Well, and I think you and I could agree on this. If custom and usage were followed over time, there would be an evolution to the place where women would matriculate into the business world, into the world of politics, and it would naturally have come to the place where they would have come to their own ascendancy in terms of voting as well. I mean, that to me seems reasonable and logical. But they seem to want to enshrine special rights, which is a divide and conquer aspect of all of this.
Oh, definitely. And I just heard recently, I hadn't had a chance to check it out, but Thomas Jefferson supposedly wanted to do away with the custom and usage of men, the first male of every family being the property owner, or getting the inheritance of the property.
Yeah.
I think he wanted women to have that right too. So everything isn't bad in nature, and I don't think women were oppressed as much as people have been told they were. Just like I know, I read a book or saw excerpts from a book that blacks had businesses in the South before, during slavery. So, they weren't oppressed as much as people thought they were either, I believe.
Well, a lot of our history has been colored, and that's a lot of what I think we're trying to do with these podcasts, LB, is to kind of maybe take away some of the murkiness that goes on behind the scenes. So I want to pull you back here to Jefferson Davis for a minute and why this was important and how it shows us what eventually, the facts. First off, let me put it to you this way. Jefferson Davis was not tried.
Right.
And so they had to come up with something. I mean, they've captured this guy. To the people in the so-called North, that would be the United States government. they had their ringleader. So now you've got a politically dicey situation because you're not going to put this guy on trial, really. So how did they extricate themselves from that little bailiwick?
Joseph would probably be better to answer that. I don't know what they did.
Well, didn't it have something to do with a double? I'm thinking here that he was basically. They dismissed the charges, right? So they used what ex post facto clause to claim they'd have to dismiss the charges.
Yes, and that detail, that's true. But I'd have to review exactly what that was. This article that he wrote, I hadn't looked at it probably in a year.
Okay.
So I'd have to
that was what I was.
To be honest with you, I hadn't gone through it and reviewed it even when I put this paper together last week, because the things that I added to it, or the rest of the story, as I call it in the paper, kind of tie to the overall concept and not the details of what Jefferson Davis had gone through. And my main point was to destroy the what Carter in Congress had done in 1978. So I think the most thing that we can see from it is that they've repaired with the 14th Amendment treason against the United States, because now people are citizens of the United States, so they will be able to be held for treason now. Under the original system, they couldn't be. So if they rebel against the United States, they will be. I see a lot of people trying to instigate, revolution right now, which will get people, put in prison, which is unfortunate. That's what I've tried to stop for 15 years now.
Yeah.
Because this is the one of the main things that I had seen when I started doing my own research. I said to myself one day, oh my God, they're going to get people put in prison now for treason. And even I saw it, even without knowing that exact detail that Joseph had brought out with the Jefferson Davis case. So it's obvious, is what I'm saying, what they've done. They've repaired a lot of the things that they couldn't get away with the 14th Amendment.
Well, I guess the takeaway that I got from the summation of the Jefferson Davis case is that they did not want to generate a court record on this.
Right.
Which would have clearly put them in the position of an historical record establishing that, in fact, not just Jefferson Davis, but the Confederate States themselves could not be guilty of treason. Hence, they were not rebels. And it would have created, I'm not sure what it would have taken to gloss that over had they done this, because the 14th Amendment wouldn't have covered it once it was on the record. They relied to a large degree on the 14th Amendment to basically repair their own deficiencies, and they did it in absence of a good historical record.
Right. They had to, like I said, they had to get people to rebel against the original system and their political sovereignty that existed under the Constitution. With the of course, it was repaired or fixed with the 14th Amendment. Everyone is in treason against their lawful government, and they're rebelling against the original constitutional system, which makes them, as liable as they are. And they can't really, they'll just say, well, it's written right there. You should have known, even though it takes a pretty good mind to see it. I've showed this to people, and they go, it doesn't say it's a crime to vote. They don't want to believe it. They don't believe it's that evil. And that's what a lot of people are going to have problems with. Even Section 3, which this paper goes over and explains, there's two sets of officers noted in there. Mm-hmm. And the language is just, I don't know, you used to be an editor, you mentioned to me. Do you see it? I mean,
No, I saw it the first time you flagged it. I saw it when I read the Reddit. And for me to go back over language like that, and I parsed the sentence, I mean, here's the sad thing. We no longer diagram sentences. We don't really understand grammatical construction. We don't even speak right, much less write well or speak well. So, the average person looks at that and they go into kind of a trance state because they don't really understand it. But if you parse the sentence, if you diagram it, and if you just go in plain language, what is this telling you? Then you begin to understand that yes, it's a crime to vote. That only criminals can vote. But then again, only criminals can vote for a criminal government that has admitted that they're criminals too. See, this is. When you begin to look at the whole juggernaut, you suddenly realize that everything they're telling you is the truth, and they put it right in your face, and you're not supposed to understand it.
Well, it's up to speculation, too, or what you think it means. Like, we go back to Section 3. You're talking about Section 2 right now, or just a minute ago.
Yeah.
They're talking about previously taken an oath. What are they saying there? That could be, is the second they take the oath and they're done with it. The next second could be previously. It depends what your perception is of what they're talking about there, because they really don't spell it out.
No, they'll wait for a Supreme Court opinion.
Right, on what it says. And
exactly.
You're not going to see anything on this. And that's what people keep asking me for. Well, where's the Supreme Court agree with you? Well, they're not going to. Matter of fact, Section 4, it says they have to suppress the rebellion or rebellions and insurrections. They can't talk about it, in other words. They have to keep it silent. So that's why they dance around the truth. Sometimes they'll say something that's pretty blatantly obvious of what they're doing, but very rarely do they spill the beans. So, if you're involved in criminal activity, you're not going to implicate yourself. And the other statement is such disability, remove such disability in that Section 3. It's up to speculate. What are they talking about? And the only thing I could figure is, in the book, the Red Amendment, I talked about possible, reinstatement of the Constitution, because they do call the 14th Amendment, they refer to it as an emergency measure. Well, what was the emergency really? They can make claims all they want, but they really don't spell anything out to say why they needed to do the 14th Amendment. And I believe they killed Lincoln because I understand that he was against the 14th Amendment. So they had to get rid of him so they could get this done. And that was all done during the time of, 1860. When did they shoot him? I forgot. When Booth shot Kennedy, Lincoln.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was a period of time in there where a lot of things transpired. So anyway, I that's the the basic notation in this paper is remove such disability, and one thing they're talking about mainly in there is upholding the Constitution. And there's, a lot of indicators where they're going to form a dictatorship. The president's been a dictator for the last 150 years. And also that came up in the Bork hearings. The Congress, I think it was Biden and Kennedy, were wondering why the president had the power to overrule them in a lot of cases. Just like the courts can overrule the juries. The juries today are just a dog and pony show because a judge can overturn their decisions, with a drop of a hat if they feel like it. And the same thing happens with Congress. If the president doesn't like what they're doing, he can overrule it. And another thing that illustrates, dictatorship is the executive order.
Yeah.
Control they have or power. So,
well, Mr. Lincoln was actually the original president for doing executive orders, so he holds a little bit of that in his historical record as well, because that was a function of the fact that you had a broken Congress at that point. Right.
So there was a lot of unlawful things going on during that presidency and during that period of time. Thing that concerned me is when I came out with my book, you saw all these Lincoln books coming out and Lincoln movies.
Yeah.
And to me, those are just distractions. They're trying to, get people. But when you say Civil War, you'll think of Lincoln instead of the 14th Amendment. So it's a distraction or what they call misdirection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can deny that there have been a lot of books and movies on Lincoln in the last 15 years.
Yeah, some of them pretty ridiculous too.
Oh yeah, the Lincoln,
Abraham Lincoln Vampire. Yeah, that was my favorite.
But this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but they have different psyches they have to appeal to, so they come up with different things.
Yeah, you've still got to get the goth vote.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap this up, take us into the payoff on this, because it goes into where we're at right now and what has been baked into the equation. Largely, the progressive plot to install the final phase within the framework of the American governance to prepare America for what we would call socialism or totalitarianism. And then you bring up Title 8 of the U.S. Code.
Right. That's the evidence of which I speak. And you and I, Randy, have talked about the two parties acting as one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And basically, Title 8 of the U.S. Code, Section 1101A37, talks about the two parties with one face. And it's defined there in so many words. And this had shown up in the code around the 1940s, I believe. And it was basically the Red Scare that installed these definitions, but things had already been transpiring. And these definitions, they'll tell you, are installed in the code to keep people from foreign countries coming in to the United States and advocating totalitarianism or dictatorships. And then, of course, A40 goes into world communism, which that's the ultimate plan of what's going on. And I'll just read that one quick. The term world communism means a revolutionary movement, the purpose of which to establish eventually a communist totalitarian dictatorship in any or all countries of the world, through the medium of an internationally coordinated communist political movement. And they've been doing that, as we know, for quite a while. I mean, if you go and look, Karl Marx even wrote some letters, or the communist faction wrote letters to Lincoln congratulating him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's history of that. And Kennedy even brought that up, that Marx had ties to America during that period of time, during Reconstruction of the Civil War so-called period. So this thing had been going on, and the secret societies controlled it, and that's why I believe they killed Kennedy, aside of reasons. He started to dig into the historic happenings with the communist takeover. So even though they put these warnings, or whatever you want to call them, into Title 8 in the mid-1900s, the ball had already been rolling downhill. long before that. So they did it as another distraction. I think the McCarthy hearings were just a dog and pony show to diffuse all the youthful idiot happenings that were going on during that period of time, with Hollywood, et cetera, being blamed for being communist. And really, the United States was already communist, and they were just trying to diffuse the situation by throwing McCarthy under the bus. He went to a Jesuit school, and he was, used, I think, as a tool to get cover up what was going on, so they could continue on the path of this world communist adventure they were implementing, which is basically fascism, world fascism.
Yep. That's where we're headed. There's one more thing I want to bring up here. And do you think we got to the place where the people are going to understand the danger we're in? I mean, we kind of went through the Jefferson Davis thing as a referential for how we got to where we are now, basically, building the case. Again, the 14th Amendment corrupted the original organic Constitution to the point where they basically, you would look at the 14th Amendment as not an addition to the Constitution, but in fact the formulation of an entirely new constitutional foundation.
What it did is created a de facto type government or corporation.
Perfect.
And de facto corporations have to uphold the original principles, even though and that's what Section 3 does. It puts a new set of officers in place. That's creatively what it's doing. It's talking about the de jure officers, and then the Congress takes or all the state and whatever officers that work in government are taking an oath to uphold the Constitution as a de jure set. But when they do that, they automatically are the de facto set of officers. That's creatively what that whole section's doing. And they have to uphold the Constitution or they can't be in office. And that's the purpose of this paper. I explained it in there. But they have to uphold, the de jure principles. And they still do to a point. But what they've done is it's given them basically free rein to do whatever they want. And that's why, in law, there's different ways of looking at things. Law is invisible until you look at a certain issue and it's brought up. Okay, so unless people bring these issues up, they don't happen. So people are thinking they're acting under the original Constitution, but as it doesn't really exist, the Congress can pass laws based on their private law, based on the United States person, to fulfill whatever agenda they have. And I remember a couple years ago that I don't know who it was, but some congressman wanted to have mention of where they get the authority to pass a certain law into existence. But it got shot down because every time they would pass a law, they would have to say the 14th Amendment. The 14th
You mean
Amendment,
the reference point? Yeah, the referential.
Yeah, the reference which gave them the authority to implement a law. So they couldn't do that. They couldn't let that happen. So it was shot down because, like I said, every time they passed a law, it would be the 14th Amendment, which is, like you said a minute ago, the new Constitution.
Yeah.
The Constitution of the United States, not for the United States.
So let's close this out because we put a lot of concepts out there, LB. And the one thing we want to underscore here is that the people who hear this and the people who are going to encounter this material need to do something. They need to go to the PAC websites, and you will tell them where they're at. They need to begin to read the material. They need to also get a copy of the Red Amendment. I can't say enough how important it is to read this book. I will tell you, it is not an easy read, but it's not written above the level of common understanding either. It's just you have to sit down and due diligence with it. And for that, it will reward you with perspective and the tools to begin actually thinking about law in a new way. So tell them where the websites are and how they can basically connect with PAC, PAC Alliance, the PAC and Law site, and all the other things that you're doing.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. It is very important. Like you said, I've had people tell me that the blinders come off when they read the book.
Yes.
So either the blinders come off or their cognitive dissonance kicks in big time, and they just don't want to believe they've been lied to. So that's the hump they have to overcome. And like you said, it's not an easy read, but if you're willing to accept the truth, it's not that bad. I mean, it becomes easier. But anyway, the book's available at redamendment.net, and it's $49 now for a single copy. I'll be starting level 2 classes soon, I hope. The interest has just been kind of bad. I don't know how we can get people interested in this. They seem to be distracted with a lot of things the last couple of years. And I can't impress how much this is important. Like, this paper needs to go viral. It's called You Have Been Warned. That's what we're talking about tonight, and the upcoming suspension of the Constitution. And they'll get away with it if we let them. And this paper needs to go viral. And I've noticed that people are not willing to take the time to understand these things. Either they don't want to, or for whatever reason, and they won't share the information. I don't know if they think they're going to get in trouble, or they're going to be tagged. But if they're already complaining about government, they're already tagged. Don't mean to make people paranoid or whatever, but this thing is obviously just, it's diabolical, and ultimately you could say it's a joke. So you're not going to get in trouble, I believe. I was scared, 15, 20 years ago when I started investigating all these things, but I've come to the conclusion that it's such a overt joke what they've done, that the more it gets exposed, the more we can laugh at it. And it's really not funny. Even though it is.
Yeah, but, sometimes you have to laugh, but, it's not funny.
It's not funny at all, but it is a joke. And I think the more people in government, especially the people in state government who don't understand what's going on, get a hold of this, it will stop what they have planned. For example, my mother says that there's no big conspiracy, and I say, well, there is, but there isn't. No, they don't sit down and give all these people in government and all the governors direct orders every day. But there are things that are going on at the top that these people are doing, and they're unconscious of doing. They don't know what they're doing. And this paper will help them, understand what they're doing and what's transpired. Then they can decide what side they're going to be on, the right side or the wrong side.
Well, we have the ability to do what they did. They've organized for over 200 years through their secret societies and through their various associations. Do they take daily marching orders? No, they don't need to. There's been a plan in place for now 150 years to subvert the United States of America, and that plan is now in its final phases. And we have the ability to do an organizing campaign that brings people together to study and understand law, to implement law, and also, as the Red Amendment points out, to begin correcting our status back to our original citizenship, and these are all part and parcel of what PAC law is doing.
Packet law, yes. It's important that we understand this. I mean, they're going for the no border concept, and you know how many people are preaching no borders, one human race. This is all new world order control or propaganda. And I think you and I talked about government has to be local to be efficient.
Yeah.
And this world government thing is nothing but an extension of more central government control and to enslave people. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are waking up to that fact. The thing that they need to understand are the details of how these things work. The only thing that's opposite the rule of law is the law of the jungle. And basically, that's what these people want. They want the law of the jungle.
That's what George H.W. Bush said in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
1991.
They want might makes right. And they talked about the rule of law. We're for the rule of law. We're not. I don't like their political platform though. So, we're not breaking any law. If that doesn't help you understand, that you need to help with this. We're not breaking any laws. We're just exposing the vampire.
Absolutely. And so with that, we're going to kind of close out this session. We're going to do some more of these over time. LB and I are going to try and take some of the material from PAC, and as it becomes pertinent, we're going to put these out. In the meantime, visit the websites. One more time with the main website where they can go, LB.
Okay. Yeah, PAC Alliance is the main website. Yeah, it's getting about, I don't know, anywhere from 8 to 10,000 unique visitors a month right now. So that's at pacalliance.us, PACALLIANCE.us. And there's a help page there if you need help finding things, because the website or the web portal for PAC is huge. You could spend literally probably a year on the website.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
researching and looking at things. Yeah, you can find the help page at the pacalliance.us/help, HELP.
Very good. Thanks for coming together with me tonight and putting this out, and we'll return again real soon with a briefing from the PAC Alliance. I'm Randy Maugans with LB Bork, signing off.